podcast is brought to you by Fireside.fm. Podcast hosting by podcasters for podcasters. Now on to the episode.
So yeah, I think why don't we start today by just checking in on some of those projects I mentioned last time we recorded, and specifically, I think the kind of the anchor point for this would be that over the weekend I'd been working on some of that stuff since we recorded, got up to speed like I talked about, and with the Fable free period or whatever they were calling it, I don't remember specifically, but basically like the ability to use Fable on a pro plan, which is what we both use primarily, was ending without it being API access. And so I decided to take that opportunity and like some of those projects I was already using Fable anyways, but I decided to like really push on it. And maybe there's two things about that. Like one of them was just seeing what Fable could do itself and like what can I do with these handful of projects, and we can get into details of what these projects were in a minute or two. But the other thing that I ended up doing, because I got to a point where it's like, well, these are big projects. I'm not going to finish them now. But since I still have Fable, about midday on Sunday, I was like, okay, I'm going to, and this was actually one of your suggestions. You're like, maybe just use Fable for planning. And so what I basically did is when I got to the point that I was ready to stop and I just wasn't going to be able to do it anymore, or I just knew I wasn't going to finish, I said, okay, analyze these. I think it was the 3 projects or so, and we can talk about them again, but analyze these and just tell me like what the roadmap should be for the next steps on each of these. And the idea there was kind of, we've talked several times about how it seems like maybe the harness is not necessarily the model, and potentially, you could, if you have a good plan, then a lower class model could probably build something pretty well.
Yeah.
And the idea here was like, let's have Fable do the hard project planning for these features. And now I have, for the last couple of days since this trial period or whatever it was called ended, I have been using Opus, and I mean, it's working pretty well. So, before I keep going, I guess, I don't know if you have anything you want to add there or anything that you've done kind of similarly like I did leading up to the end of Fable's availability.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually, this last week, as that was running out, I didn't have a lot of time to use it, but the week before, when the first deadline was looming, I actually went in and with one of my work projects, I did exactly the same thing as you're talking about, where it was like, I know I'm not going to be able to actually build much of it, but I had to go through and essentially like evaluate everything I had done in the last 6 months and give me kind of the roadmap and suggestions of like, how can you make this better? And this is like the chatbot project that I've been working on like chatbot's not even really fair. It's like the full agency, operating system type thing.
Yep.
And so it was interesting to actually have it go through. And I've actually since had 5.6 Sol do it as well to kind of compare them a little bit. And I think, it's funny because like this goes back to just a lot of the stuff we've talked about where it's like, sometimes it's hard to tell how good or bad things are when you're just like running code generation, like you really start to see the difference when you truly like get in and start using things. But I also have noticed kind of like what you're pointing out is like the plan is so important, and like as the harnesses get better and better and they utilize plans, like having a fully thought out and visualized plan is like super important. And so like on my side, I did the exact same thing where it was like, okay, I know I'm not going to be able to use all my Fable, and get this project done before I was going to run out. So I was like, just develop a bunch of plans. So like I've got like actually 2 of my projects, I've got entire roadmaps set up with Fable. And it was like the overarching roadmaps as well as like planning individual features as well to like get as much of that higher quality thinking laid out. So it's easier for Opus or even Sonnet in some cases to be able to come in and do a good job with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of cool that you were doing it, even though it wasn't the very end, but you were still doing the same type of thing. So maybe you could speak a little bit to, you did that roughly a week before I did.
Yep.
then in the intervening time when we still had Fable, like were you actually building those things that you had Fable plan with Fable, or to your point right at the end there, were you actually using Opus and Sonnet just depending on what the things were?
It's funny. I haven't had a ton of time to flesh those out, but I was actually bouncing between, because we talked about before, I use Codex and Claude Code and kind of
Yep.
bounce back and forth between them. And so I actually have simultaneously tested out Soul. I think I've been using Luna, because I think Luna is the mid tier. Because like I also was noticing like Codex has now changed from 5 hour limits to you can burn through your entire 2 week limit in one go. Like you have all 2 weeks. I actually did it. Like I didn't realize how quickly it was burning down, and I didn't hit a 5 hour limit. And I used an entire week's worth of, my limit
Yep.
in an hour and a half, because I was actually using
Jeez.
Soul. And it's funny, like I don't know if you've noticed it with Fable. Like I've noticed it both with Fable and with Soul. They're more thorough. Like that is one thing I've definitely noticed is
Yeah.
like it's not like it used to be where it was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing and it's pretty quick. It just goes through, it builds it, it's done. Like it now is so meticulous, which is awesome, except for when not even thinking, I set it on a task that was like super basic. Like it wasn't actually hard. It was just one of those things where like I had been using GPT 5.5 on like high thinking, and it
Okay.
was fast enough and like I got enough usage out of it that it was fine. So I was kind of figuring like Soul would be relatively close to that. But because of how thorough it was, like it was, and here's the worst part about it. I just remember this. It actually got it wrong in the end. And it was like my fault because I didn't point it like to the right folder. And this was again, like, I think we talked about this in our first or second episode, was like, even now we still have to have the right context. You still like can't just be like, hey, do this and expect it to get it right if there's any ambiguity at all. And so it actually did what I was asking in the wrong folder, like on the wrong project, essentially. Like it was same client, but it was a different repo.
Yep.
Burned through an entire week's worth of usage. I was like, oh, well, that's not good. Fortunately, like OpenAI is actually giving away like resets right now. So like you can reset your whole week's worth of usage. And I've got like two
Hmm.
or three of them saved up. And so I was able to like refresh it and then go back. So this is a long tangent to say, like, I actually then dropped down to Luna and was having that work on stuff that I planned with Fable. And,
Okay.
again, like I hadn't tested Luna a lot before that. So it could just be that like Luna's a better model, which it probably is. But I've definitely noticed like an improvement of just like, and I've noticed it all around. It's like they're getting better about, test driven development, like making sure that it's actually like setting up tests correctly, implementing it, then actually like testing it to make sure it works. I've
Yep.
also noticed a lot more like agent browser usage. So like it'll actually go out and visually check everything it's doing, which again, like that's harness. That's not the model. And so this is where it gets a little challenging on my end, is trying to figure out like what of the things that are going better are actually the models have gotten better versus just they're doing the right things now. They're using the tools better. They have more tools to use. And so it's really hard to say like, oh yeah, when I develop with Fable, it's definitely doing a better job versus just like, because I've run Sonnet and it's done the exact same things. So it's not like it's
Yeah.
exclusive to Fable. So it's a little bit hard to truly like equate it, all the different model, or like, judge all the different models with what we do. Like I know some people are like, here's a one-shot prompt for Fable to build a video game with this and that. And like, sure, then you can judge Opus versus Fable versus whatever. But when you're already in a code base, you already like have a lot there. It gets to be less clear cut in my mind.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I got a couple thoughts. So I'll start with like the first one, which is back to just the models
Yeah.
testing themselves and kind of knowing what to do. So one of the projects I've been working on again is it's a video game that I'm building. Um, it's using Dragon Ruby.
Yep.
And the reason I'm basically talking about the Dragon Ruby part is because of the way, and this is Opus now, by the way. So
Sure.
I had Fable. I did Fable, and we'll come back to maybe what I did with Fable with this project specifically, because I started with it. I forget specifically. It was Opus, I guess. It's been
Sure.
maybe 3-4 months or something. I forget that I started it. So it was around when Opus was, maybe 4-6 or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
So it started there, and then recently this weekend I pushed with Fable, and I'll get into the specifics of that in a couple minutes because it's a little different. But
Sure.
basically, I already had the engine with 4.6 or whatever it was that
Yep.
started it. But now, after I did some planning with Fable, like I talked about the last few days, when I've now been implementing that plan using Opus 4.8, the interesting thing is that everything is written in Ruby for Dragon Ruby
Sure.
for the engine.
Yep.
But what Opus keeps doing, and I'm not sure, I haven't like actually read through the plans real thoroughly to say like, oh, it's telling it to do this.
Yep.
But whatever happened is it will, it tells me this. It's like, yeah, so I wrote this Python prompt to basically replicate the same logic that Dragon Ruby's using for like physics and things, and just like verify them that way, because it can't play the game. It's not in
Sure.
a browser or anything. It
Yep.
can't actually load it. So I thought that was kind of interesting, the fact that it was doing that anyways, but
Yeah.
also just like the way it went about it was kind of interesting too.
Writing Python to check your Ruby. I like it.
I know. Yeah, it was kind of, I wasn't sure how to feel about it at first. I do know that that's one of the languages it likes to go with. So
Oh yeah.
that part
I mean,
makes sense. But
it's always writing Python. Like pretty much every day for the last couple of days, I see like just Python script after Python script, which, it makes a lot of sense. It's, I think we talked about it a little bit too, is some people even see MCPs being less of a thing and more like just write Python or write, code to hit APIs and stuff like that. So
I do that all the time, especially when there isn't an MCP.
Oh, for sure.
Or the MCP doesn't do everything you want, or whatever the case might be. If the API's got it, yeah. I am constantly having Python scripts pop up and do that sort of thing.
Yeah,
yep.
For sure. Sorry,
yeah.
Tangent there.
No, you're all good. I mean, that makes sense. I don't really think I had a whole lot else to add to that specific part. I was just wanting to touch on the testing and how I was seeing that with Opus, even though, again, I'm not sure. Maybe I should look back and see, like, did Fable actually say something about, oh, this would be a good way to test it?
Sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that's an interesting, I think it's interesting because to me, it's like, if Fable didn't specify that, then that's more of a harness thing in my mind. It's like the harness knows, okay, I'm going to test Python's a way that I can do these types of things. And so, and again, like that's where the lines blur.
Yeah. And I'll just add, and this actually I just noticed yesterday, and this was a work thing, but I also have now moved it over to all this personal stuff. We talked several episodes ago about permissions and how do you get it so that things run, but don't throw it, don't put it into dangerously accept permissions mode.
YOLO mode.
Yeah. And I don't know, I just realized this now, that at the bottom, when you're in Claude Code in terminal, at least, it's like Shift Tab or something like that. You can like switch which version you have. And there's one called auto mode. And I think I've had it on accepts mode. So it was asking me a lot more, but basically when I first prompted it to use auto mode, it does pop up and it has this little blurb about this is what it's going to do. And one of the things it like spelled out there was it's not going to ask me if I want it to, do move commands, copy commands, like all the general things that we were talking about in that episode, basically. Like, this is dumb. Like, we trust that this is going to work. So that's been a change. It's like it makes Opus work longer than I'm used to, at least.
Yeah.
And I sort of had noticed, though, that before I'd even done that with Fable would work longer than even Opus would in those modes. Although Fable would definitely get tripped up with some of these same things too. But
no, it's interesting. Like, we obviously had the episode where we complained about that. And, I think that mode has always been there in some capacity. But from what I've seen, it's changed how it actually works lately. Because, like, I had it on auto mode for a long time. but
Yep.
it still asked me about everything. Like it would, like you could do like the full bypass, obviously, but you know, you don't want to do that.
Right.
But it was interesting, and this has been an interesting thing that I've just noticed using both Codex and Claude Code, you know, pretty much every day. You know, Claude Code used to be pretty good about just like letting it run. Then it got really, really restrictive, where it was like you have to approve everything. Codex was kind of like you have to approve everything. Then over the last couple months, it's really gotten to that like it would work a lot longer than Claude Code without asking me things. And now it seems like we're bouncing back where like Claude Code's catching up to that. And so it's a
Yep.
really interesting shift that I've seen where it's like, and I actually like that Codex has been pushed so far because I think it's actually pushing Claude Code to be better and better. And they're actually like both actually making a full, I mean, it's always like if you don't have competition, you can be lazy. And so having other
Yeah.
people that are pushing it definitely brings more innovation. And so that's been really cool to see. But I agree, like both sides have definitely gotten to a point now where permissions are getting better by default. Like you've always been able to, you know, mess with the permissions. And I noticed like I went from using the Claude Code, you know, the Claude desktop app to
Yep.
run Claude Code for a while there. And I can't even remember why. I think it was back when Codex was like, you get 2x to use the actual desktop app. And so I just, for some reason, started using Claude Code in desktop as well. When I went back over to the IDE version, the plugin, it actually like, it must have remembered all my settings there, but not in the desktop app. And so like that actually started to make it a little bit easier. And then it's gotten better from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you talking about that before too on that other episode. So that
Yeah.
is
Yep.
interesting that, to your point, like they are kind of feel like they're trying to, I wouldn't even say course correct, but trying to like just
Yeah.
compete in some ways with those sorts of features. Because it's been nice, like especially with my work stuff when what I'm doing is like reviewing a pull request, like I don't want to sit
Sure.
there and have to be like, yeah, go ahead and run this git command that I trust. Like
Yeah.
it's on a read only key that you can't break anything. Like just do
Yep.
it. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of nice to be able to unlock that. Because then I don't want to say this is like the ideal world, but it's like when I first started getting into this stuff recently and like trying to do more with it anyways with
Yep.
reviews, like my ideal situation would have been I kick off the agent, I let it do its thing, and I come back to it when I'm ready, but I could move on
Sure.
and, because I've
Yep.
got 30 different things I could be doing all the time. So
Yep.
I don't want to sit there and be, the little button pusher that Homer used to put in front of the
Yes.
nuclear power plant and
Exactly.
sit there and boom, boom, boom. Like that's basically what you're
Yep.
doing.
Pretty much.
Even to like burnout stuff that we've talked about, it's like that
Yeah.
that just gets old and frustrating, especially when you would feel like you get to a point where you are probably done with it, or you think you are
Yeah.
anyways, and then you go and do something else, or you get pulled to something else, and then you come back, and it's like, great, it's waiting for me to say yes again. Like,
Yep. Yeah. And that is such a limiter for truly doing a lot of things at once. But it's also like it's so hard because if you give it complete control too, kind of like to my point of the it worked in the wrong directory. Like, yes, that was my fault, but you know how easy it is to make those types of like it wasn't even like a mistake, you know. It wasn't like I told it to go to the wrong thing. It, you know, everything that I talked to it about was like in one directory and then it went to another for some reason. And so it's like I still am leery of like, hey, agents, just go work 24 hours a day without any supervision, you know, and like I'll
right,
check in the morning. Like I get that that's appealing, and there's a lot of work out there that can probably handle that pretty well, but it's still a case of like the stupidest things can completely derail your entire project if you don't have those check-ins. So it's like, how do you find the right balance of hitting the yes button when it really matters and like having those check-ins, but also like letting it work when it knows what it needs to do?
right, yeah, exactly. And I agree. I think we actually had a discussion about this, like the verification of things, and like
Yeah.
how could we even get to fully automated like that, and you can't really get there until you trust that it is testing the right things. And like
Yep.
the Ralph loop or just any kind of agentic loop like that, that's not an answer in my opinion, because if the answer is just throw it at the problem over and over and over and over and over
Yeah.
again until it gets it right. Like, how does it know it's right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to define that somehow,
Yep.
that the agent can test via either browser or tool calls or whatever it might be.
Yep.
And yes, that stuff all exists, but it's not simple to just set that up
And it's
and
not even
trust it
that
really.
though. No, and that's kind of the key is like, I mean, there's two pieces on the whole agent loop thing. First, agent loop feels like, and actually it doesn't feel like it actually did come from the AI labs, which if you've got infinite tokens and you're not paying for them, of course, agent loop it up, like that makes perfect sense. If you have a budget and you've got to actually like do this within the token usage that you're allotted and can afford, that's not the solution. Like you can't just be like, throw more AI at the problem. Like that doesn't help. But it's also things like, and this is very like subjective to what kind of work you do. Like if you're a back-end programmer where things are more like there is a correct answer, so to speak, of like what output is. Like, it's like unit testing. There's pretty predictable inputs and outputs. Yeah, you can automate that relatively easily. But if you're doing any like front end type stuff, it is crazy how, we did the design episode and you can get good results out of it. But I've been having it run in a project that I'm doing for work where it's like pretty non-standard design. I mean, it's not crazy, but
Yeah.
it's like definitely not anything like in the Tailwind family of design or even the Claude Code or the Claude Design family of design.
Sure.
And it just is terrible at it. Like, and it'll even like take screenshots to look at what it's doing. And it's like, hey, we're looking good here. And I look at it and I'm like, how did you even get here when you have all of my like code and examples and, design references? And yet it still is like using the wrong fonts. It's like has things that aren't even like aligned correctly. It's like, and I'm using Opus too. It's not even like I'm using a crap model or anything. And like, it's not a difficult task. And like, these are just examples of it's even using the tools. Like it's going out and looking, it's going out and evaluating, and it's still, its definition of what is right is not the right definition. And again, like if you're doing pretty straightforward, like there is a clear cut right answer, you can easily like do evaluations on that. If the right answer is like subjective design, that's a way harder thing. And like maybe that's the point. It's like you don't do those things in your agent loops. But
Yeah.
I find more and more like the really hard backend stuff doesn't take as much time as it used to with AI. It's more of the like intricate subjective stuff that actually takes the most time. And like that's it's like that's the stuff I'd love to have run overnight while I'm sleeping versus me having to babysit it. And it's harder to get there at this point.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I'll even just like add, so my other podcast we just recorded yesterday and we were talking about the same kind of thing, and our guest
Sure.
Nate Berkopec just brought up the fact that when an AI lab is, trying to solve a math problem,
Yep.
like there is a known answer basically,
Yeah.
or there's a way to do it.
Yep.
And you can basically just throw that agent or the agents at it over and over and over until you get that proof correct.
Yep.
That's not where we're at. Like what you just described there, we don't have that luxury of saying, yep, this is the way to be done.
Yep.
Even if it's back end stuff, you don't always have that answer.
No.
And so it does make it a lot harder to point it at something. And like even tests, like depending on who writes the tests, how well the tests are written, like can you really trust that those are correct to prove that it's done? And that gets really tricky to then determine what is done and how do you trust that the AI is done.
I mean, it's funny because hasn't this been a problem with humans as well? Like,
Right.
It's not like humans were perfect at writing tests and always wrote the right ones. Like, there are many examples of test suites that were completely green and the app is still broken. Like
Right.
it is so hard to just say this is right in any of these things. And again, like good for people that are cool and have the, budget and confidence of like running an agent loop. If it's working, that's awesome. Like that's I would love to get there. I just, in my personal experience, I haven't found the confidence to be like, I can set the AI off without any intervention and trust that it's going to get there, even if it loops. Like, to me, I've actually found almost worse results when it does loop. Like, if it doesn't get it on the first time, I find that, I mean, sure, you can start completely over and it might get there the second time, but like, it just, it's almost a compounding issue sometimes too, where it's like it keeps going further off the path the more you keep having it hit its head on it.
Yeah. So I've got an interesting story to add with that. And it's not exactly a loop because I didn't have it
Sure.
running in a loop, but it still paints the same picture because the loop, instead of it just being the AI going over and over and adjusting itself, it was me saying, no, let's change it this way. But
Yep.
so back to the video game. So I had the character, and for context, when I started with Fable on, like, I don't know, Thursday, Friday, whatever day it was last week, when I decided, hey, I'm going to see what Fable can do. Part of the reason I did that is because I had no assets, and
Sure.
it was all not pixels, but just vector drawn stuff.
Yep.
That was just to get a feel for it. So I had no characters, I had no actual sprites in this yet.
Sure.
It's just a 2D game.
Yep.
And so I had seen this video by Adam Little, and we can link to that video. It was pretty cool. What he was doing was, you already mentioned this, like, he was taking like toys that his kids had, and he would take a
Sure.
picture, he'd show it to Fable, and then he'd have it create a video game.
Yep.
And then he got to the point where he wanted better assets for his video games.
Sure.
And so he created a skill that does it. It does like it makes like the lighting better and all this kind of stuff.
Sure. Yep.
And his examples look cool. He was like doing, it wasn't actually Mario, but it was like kind of like a Mario type game
Sure.
that he would just like throw at Fable, and it would build it, and then he would like use his new skill, and it would kind of make it look nicer. It would add I can't think right now. It's drawing a blank, but it's the kind of the road, or not the rotation, but when the background doesn't move at the same speed. I can't think.
The parallax.
Yeah, parallax. Yep,
Yeah.
scrolling. Yeah,
Yep.
it would like add that. So, anyways, I had this idea that'd be cool. I'm gonna throw Fable at this because it's a skill that he put out there.
Sure.
And I was also kind of curious because he was building iOS games,
Okay.
which Dragon Ruby can do iOS, but
Sure.
the quick plug on Dragon Ruby, the reason I'm actually sticking with it is because it's built in a way that you could actually deploy it to anything, including
Okay.
PlayStation, Xbox, all that stuff, which
Sure.
those are hard to get onto, but either way, like,
Yeah.
you build the same game once and you can distribute it from all the way from iOS, up to whatever. So
Yep.
I was curious though, like, can his skill, like, how will it handle Dragon Ruby? Is it pretty
Sure.
agnostic? So the interesting part is, yes, it was. It actually worked really well. But to get back to where I was starting and why I brought this all up, is that it did a really good job. It created my little character. It created backgrounds. I got the parallax scrolling. I got like a lot of stuff. It was like, I don't even remember, like a day's worth of, not full
Sure.
day, but like
Yeah.
a day of off and on prompting it to do, like, okay, let's do this part and this part and this part. And I
Yep.
got a world. And that was all great. And then I looked at the character and I'm like, his legs look weird. Like, he's running super weird. Like, I don't get it. So if I went through iterations 3 or 4 times with,
Yep.
how do I get those legs to work better? And so it was funny because it started out like it had the speed of the legs moving so fast you couldn't see one of the
Sure.
issues, which the issue was the character was actually galloping. His legs were never crossing. He just he was literally galloping. His legs are always in the same position, but you didn't know that at first.
Sure. Yeah.
So then I'm like, oh, okay, we got to fix that. Like, so I had it, and for what it's worth, like, this skill also ties into an MCP for a tool called Fall, FAL AI.
Oh, yep. Yep.
And I wasn't familiar with it, but so I was actually like spending money. It's not too bad. I think it was like
Sure.
15 cents basically per rotation through or whatever.
Yep.
So I mean, I spent like $5 total, no big deal.
Sure.
But anyways, it's like, it wasn't just me on a whim just throwing it out there, and that's another reason why I wouldn't want to just like throw the agent
Yeah.
loop in.
Yep.
But it went from the too fast to then telling it to slow down so I could say, oh wait, we're galloping, we got to fix that. So then it sends it over again, and then it doesn't quite get it still. And like the actually, I think it was still galloping the first time, like the first or the second iteration, I should say,
Sure.
like
Yep.
didn't even fix that part. So then finally, I think I even took, yeah, I did take videos and all this stuff just to see like
Yep.
how well can it do this. Like, and again, like I couldn't even do a video if I was letting an agent loop go. But
Yeah.
the funniest part was after maybe 4 or 5 iterations, it got to the point where it determined that it needed a I mean it was already sprite based, but it
Yeah.
needed like I forget the term. It's like a sprite sheet, I think is what
Oh,
they call them.
spreadsheet. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so it's got like the whole animation all the way
Yeah.
through.
All of it's on one image, and you just change the positioning.
Exactly. And
Yep.
so it decided, well, we should do a sprite sheet because we didn't do that. So it does a sprite sheet, but then it like sliced it up because I don't know if that's the way Dragon Ruby wants it or something, but
Sure.
either way, it sliced it up and then it like re-put it back together. And then when I tested it, his legs would go from forward to backwards. They were like rotating wrong. They were crossing, but they were,
Sure. There you go.
it was like his waist was just like rotating around. And
You're
I'm
just
like,
spinning.
yeah. And like if I had let an agent loop run through that, like at what point was it
Yeah.
going to actually know it was right? Like never.
For sure.
I mean, and
Yeah.
again, this is hard because it's Dragon Ruby and it doesn't have the option to like take screenshots, or at least that I
Sure.
don't think so. So like that, it's a little bit of a unique case, but it does paint the picture of like if you just let the agent go and you don't have a way to prove that it's right, like it gets really tough. And even at this point now, like I got it to be pretty well fixed. I did say, hey,
Sure.
this doesn't look right, and I shared another video and I said, look at what his
Yeah.
legs are doing, and it did. It's like, oh yeah, we should reorder it. So like it's
Yep.
sort of okay, but like
Yeah.
even that, like I'm not going to keep it. If I ever release this game, which
Sure.
I don't know if I'm going to, if I can get it well or get it built out well and like it, maybe I
Yeah.
will. But like this is not going to be the sprite that goes into it. Let's put it that way. I
It's
would rather it
the
be
proto
human drawn
sprite.
at this point. Pretty much, it's the placeholder so that it can get a feel for what the game is.
And I think that's a good thing to call out too. Is just like think about what we're complaining about here. It's like, oh, the computer didn't generate the animation right, but like the fact that it got that far, and we're
I
like,
know.
oh yeah, this little bit isn't working. And like, I totally get it's like important to get right, but it's also like taking that step back and thinking how cool it is that it even did all this in the first place. And
Oh yeah,
but
for sure.
that's what can be so frustrating though too, is where it's like it gets you so close sometimes, and then that like tiny little bit to finish it off just it can't quite get. And like I've seen it in so many cases, and this is a little bit different because like you're not going to necessarily go in and draw it yourself, but like especially with design or with like front end development type stuff, that's when I just eject and go in and do it myself. I just go in
Yeah.
and like fine tune things and take care of what I know I could eventually get the AI to do, but it's like I'm going to waste so much time and energy trying to direct it there that I can just bail out and do it myself because I
Yep.
know exactly what I'm doing. And it's a good distinction too, because not everybody can do that. Like it depends on your background. It depends on the problem you're trying to solve. And I think it's still important to recognize like, when does it make sense to just have the human do it? Like if you've
Yeah.
got that expertise, just take care of it. Like I noticed it I think it was today, I was having the AI essentially work on something pretty simple, but it was just something I didn't want to do. And I had it do like another iteration of it to like fine tune some stuff. And I'm just like watching it churn and think through it. I'm like, I could have already had this done, but I'm so in that like mode of just let the AI do the boring stuff that I'm like, okay, I'll take the 5 minutes it'll take versus the like 30 seconds that I could do. And I think it's just something that, us as programmers need to keep in mind is like, no, we shouldn't write every line of code, but there also is a time where you might as well just write the code, like try to find the right balance versus just like outsourcing all of it just because you can.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. This was a good reminder again, like you were saying, like even with web development stuff, of how tedious it can get when you're trying to change those little details.
Yeah.
And if I had to like redo it, what probably would have been more successful, I should say, is if I had gone from scratch and I said, build me this type of game.
Sure.
I think it would have built it pretty quickly, and it would have
Yeah.
looked more like what, was in the video that I originally saw the skill in and all that stuff.
Yep.
But this is the thing. It's like the legacy code problem with
For sure.
AI that has gotten a lot better, especially with the advent of Claude Code and
Yep.
Codex being able to see the whole project.
Yep.
But it's like the same type of thing again, where it has context like in this video game, like the context really didn't matter. It was just this one character. Like it doesn't matter what the level looks like. It doesn't matter what the
Yep.
physics look like. It's literally the animation of the sprite.
Yeah.
And even before I got to this point, like I've already figured out how to do levels without AI because I didn't want to get into this situation where I'm like, okay, burn, 1,000 tokens to move this pixel,
Yep.
10 places or whatever, 10
Yeah.
sprites or whatever it is.
Yep.
So I'm still always like trying to keep those. I like what the term you use there, like the eject, button, or like
Yep.
the escape hatch or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
to be able to dive in and be like, no, hold on, I'll just do this. Like this is pointless to keep going back and forth with you.
Yeah. I think it's the balance, that like that's so important with all this stuff is like, and I think it's something that I have a feeling in time, a lot of people will kind of come back down. We kind of went from the arc of like, you used AI a little bit, started playing around with it. Then you're like, oh, I'm never going to let it just do its own thing. I'm always going to be checking everything. I'm going to read every line of code. Then we kind of hit that arc of like, okay, whatever, it'll just do everything. We'll just, test it out, see what happens. I think we're going to end up in kind of that happy medium, where it does the majority of it, but humans still need to be in there truly.
Yep.
And like, sure, maybe there's going to be a jump in AI someday that truly changes the dynamic, but I haven't seen it yet. Like Fable, from what I've heard, what I've seen, is very, very powerful. And supposedly, like, you're not supposed to give it a lot of details. It's more just like, what is your end goal? And it'll get there. And that's awesome. But I still think we're a long ways away from not needing humans to have a part in pretty much all of it to actually make it good. And like, that's the key piece is like, yes, it can build something, but is it good? Is it better than what anybody could build? Like that's where
Right.
I think humans are always going to be important to make it different than other things and better than other things that are just generated solely by AI.
Yeah, and this may be a good point to just start wrapping up, but just
Yeah.
along those lines, I've off and on have listened to the Startups for the Rest of Us podcast
Sure.
for a long time with Rob Walling and various guests and whatever. But I actually just happened to be listening to it again this week, and he was answering a bunch of questions about just like how SaaS is not dead and blah blah blah, like all just deep trying to not debunk necessarily, but just like put
Yeah.
his take on his thoughts there.
Yep.
And a lot of it really just came down to that, people have always been able to copy other people's
For
businesses.
sure. Yep.
We can just do it faster now. Doesn't mean it's
Yep.
right. Doesn't mean it's, better. Doesn't mean it's less sloppy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when it comes to businesses and things, his point was, it's still going to come down to how well do you execute the human parts.
Yeah.
The marketing, which yes, could be used by AI and should have some AI in the mix, but
For
it
sure.
can't just all leverage AI because then
Otherwise,
you're going to be
everything's going to be the same thing.
exactly. Everything's going to be the same, and like you're just going to be the slop company that no one's going to want to work with.
Yep.
And I think that's the differentiator too that is going to still be in the mix, and I think is even going to be more prevalent is where are the humans being utilized to get
Yeah.
more out of them than you could before, not just how do you use AI to do everything and then you're just done and you're got the $1 million in the bank or whatever.
Yeah. And honestly, like to that point, and I know we'll wrap it up here, but to that point, it is like if the AI is doing all of it, the humans won't have any passion for it because they won't even know what's
Right.
going on. So it'll be like, yeah, it's a cool product, but like so many cool products take off because people are passionate about it. They sell
Yep.
it because they're actually like excited about it. They understand it. And that goes even to like the marketing material. if the AI is producing the marketing material, there's no soul to it. There's no feeling to it. It's just like generated stuff. And like, yes, you should have AI in that loop, but the ideas should come from a human. The passion should come from a human. The AI just makes it easier to create, distribute, all that type of stuff. And I think that's just the part where I think the people that truly like use this every day know that, but you just see so much of like the outside world. What we talk about is just like AI can do everything. All you need is just to run it through whatever, and it'll build you an app and make you $1 million. And it happens, but they're not the companies that are going to be around forever. They're not going to
Right.
last. They're not going to be the true like huge companies. Like they're just going to get eaten up by OpenAI or Anthropic as these things get better and better.
Yeah. Yep. And one other thing I'll just add too that I think is relevant here is that I don't like me personally building this game. While it's fun, it would be way less fun if all I did was say,
Yeah.
build me a game that's just like this.
Yep.
Because what I want to build, I want it to actually be like me doing the level
For sure.
design, me, while I wish I could draw all the
Yep.
assets, I can't. That's
Yep.
just the reality of my skills and time. So I'm going to leverage AI for that.
For
I'm going to
sure.
leverage AI for the code because, again, like I could probably get there, but it would just take me forever to even be able to get like a normal, forget
Yep.
parallax scrolling. I wouldn't be able to scroll from left to right,
For sure.
like,
Yeah.
things like that. And so, and I know that, I don't want to keep going too long here and I don't want to belabor the point, but I know a lot of video game players have pushed back on games created with
Oh yeah.
AI.
Yep.
And so I'm aware of that, but at the same time, like this is the way I think about this is it's something that would never happen if there wasn't
Yeah.
AI. So I'm going
Yeah.
to leverage it, but I also want to have the human components that make it feel like a real game that's not just slop to be out there to make money. So,
Yeah. No, and I mean that's been my take for so long because like I work on the visual side of it and like I do image generation stuff like that. And the way I have always looked at it is very similar to that, where it's like, yes, somebody could do this. Like I could hire somebody to come in and create art or generate whatever, but I don't have the budget for it. So I'm not
yep,
taking somebody else's job. I'm essentially like filling in a gap I have that would not be filled if AI didn't exist. So, and that's where it's like, if you're a huge company and you're using AI for things that a human could do better, that's not cool. Because if you've got the money to do it, you should actually be paying people that can do a better job. But if
right.
you're like a solo entrepreneur or, building something for fun or whatever, it's like, if you can fill in a gap and still like, for me, it's like I can generate art and I know what good art is, but I also try not to like be like, hey, create this in the, Simpsons visual
Yeah,
style. It's like, sure, there's references, but it's still like trying to use my creativity to come up with a cool look that isn't just stealing somebody's look. And again, like, yes, I could hire somebody to do it, but I have no budget to do that. And so it's
right.
like, it is just extending my abilities to do things to get further in a project than I could if I didn't have it as a tool. And so I think there's a really strong distinction there that people sometimes miss is like, it's not about replacing people. It's just about filling gaps that otherwise wouldn't be filled.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this is either not going to happen or we're going to use AI.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's not
Those
about
are the
reducing
choices.
headcount
Yep.
or not wanting to have other people included. But
Yeah.
I mean, I would think it'd be awesome. I mean, sure, game development it sounds like hell,
Oh,
but at the
yes,
same time, like I've always wanted to make a game, so I
for
would be
sure.
okay if I knew a great programmer and a great artist and
Yeah.
I could work with if I could afford to work with them, I
Yep.
would 100% pick that route.
For sure.
But that's just not where we are. And so,
Yeah.
but I still want to do it and it's working out. So, this is kind of a funny tangent and I think it's all related, but it just kind of got me thinking about how like there is the difference between just complete slop that's made by AI versus
Yep.
something that is guided by a human, and whether it's a website, whether it's a
Yeah.
product, whether it's marketing, whether it's video game, whatever. Like, I think you're right. Like this, we're a long way off from AI being able to do a really, really good job where you
Yeah.
can't even tell the difference, and maybe we'll never get there. I would be okay with that, honestly.
For
Like,
sure.
there's still so many leaps and bounds past where we were before we had AI.
Yeah.
Like I think, anyways, maybe we should just wrap up because we can just keep going.
For sure.
All right, cool. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to add there? I don't want to completely cut you off.
No, I think, yeah, like we're on the same page there. It's like you take the humans out of it, and then what's even the point? Like
Yeah.
the human side of it is what makes it great, and AI is just a tool. It can do more than tools ever have been able to, but at the end of the day, it's just a tool that creative people and talented people can wield in very interesting ways. But on its own, it is slop. If there is no human component to it, it's literally just slop. So,
Yep. All right, well put. I think that's a great place to end. So, well, if you like our ramblings today, feel free to like and subscribe down below on the YouTube channel. Feel free to on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast host. If you got a rating, go ahead and give us 5 stars. That'd be great. And we'll see you next time.